Hello, welcome to the first video of 2023. Happy New Year. And in today's video, I'll be looking at the Polkadot Web Wallet. I'm going to show you in a detailed way how to actually set up the wallet, what you need to download, and how to go through the different options, what each of these do. Of course, we're not going to look at every single little detail because they're just way too much to cover in one single video, but I will be covering as much information as possible. And of course, I'll show you what's new because I have done one of these videos each year from 2021. To begin with, just to teach people how this complex wallet actually works. Now let's kick things off straight away, and as you can see, we are on the Polkadot JS.org website here, and you've got different options available to you here, and one of them is the apps, which is the official web wallet, and then you've got the extension. So the first thing that you need to do is you need to download this browser extension because you need this in order to interact with many of the dApps that are part of the Polkadot and Kusama ecosystems. So let's kick things off. The first thing you do is you click on this link, and then it'll prompt you to download the extension and to install it. And so this is how it's going to look. This is again in Mozilla Firefox and Google Chrome. It is going to be very similar. There isn't a big difference. And so what you have to do here, as you can see, I've already got an account here, but if you are to set it up from the beginning, I'm going to show you how to do it. You simply click the plus sign here. And then you go to create new account. You've also got the option to derive from an account, also to export all accounts if you've got a number of them here, and they're going to be exported in JSON files, which you can then import into another wallet or maybe in the same wallet on another computer if you decide to do that. You can also import an account from the pre-existing seed, which means the 12-word or 24-word passphrase that you may have written down if you had set up a wallet in the past. And the restore account from backup JSON file, which goes back to exporting here. So anything that you would have exported here, you can then restore, or if you had exported from a previous computer that you had, then you can just restore that file here. But just make sure that you've got the password ready, because each backup file comes with a password to unlock that wallet. Otherwise, you can't unlock it, right? There are other ways to access it, maybe through brute force if you did forget that password, because I can imagine there are people that might have forgotten their password, might have lost their mnemonic seed phrase, and they really want to get that wallet, right? They want to desperately get it, and you can brute force it with certain tools, I assume. Again, I'm not going to talk about that in this video because I haven't personally done that. I didn't need to do it, thankfully, and hopefully I will not need to do it, and hopefully you don't have to do it either. But I know that there are cases that do require this to access it, right? And so that is another option, because there are no number of attempts apparently available, so you can try as many times as you want to try and get access to that file and your wallet. The other option is connect to a Ledger device here. As you can see, if you have the hardware wallet, you can connect to your Ledger device. Apparently you can also take part in governance voting, which we'll talk about as well in the video, so stay tuned till the end. Now let's kick things off with creating the wallet. So the first thing you do is you click on create new account, and here you can see there's no username whatsoever for my wallet. It just shows unknown because I will be prompted to give it a username later on, or basically just a friendly name if you want to think of it this way, which you can compare when you look at all the list of your wallets, because you could create as many as you want. So this is the 12-word mnemonic seed. Again, this is what you need to write down on a piece of paper or maybe on a pen drive, something that's not connected to the internet ideally, just so that you're reducing that risk of losing this, because it is important. So let's just assume that I would have written this down. Then what you need to do is you need to tick this box here saying that I've saved my mnemonic seed safely. Go to the next step, and then here is very important. You've got different options to choose the network. You can allow it to use on any chain, so which means that you're going to be generating a public address for each of these chains, each of these networks. Most of these are parachains. Some of them are parachains on Polkadot, some of them are parachains on Kusama, which we'll talk about when we get to that as well. But what's important to keep in mind here is that you've got an address here. This is the public address for your Substrate account, okay? This is your generic address for everything that's related to Substrate, which means that this account then gets different addresses derived from it, which you'd have to use if you want to send coins or tokens to your individual parachain, for example. Let's say, for example, you've got a Kala here or Altair. These are parachains, And so what would happen is that if you want to send coins from an exchange to any of these networks, you would have to send them to your dedicated public address, which is associated to this network. So that's what you need to keep in mind here. Sometimes it does work to transfer, for example, from wallet to wallet to this generic substrate address, because it is smart enough to detect that you're sending it on the Akala network or on the Altair network, and then it automatically changes that for you and sends it to your correct address, and then so you'll see those coins arrive in your wallet. Okay, so it's important to understand what this actually is here, the generic substrate address. Try not to use this though, to be fair, because you will get a dedicated public address like I told you. So we'll look at that when we get to it. Now, I like to use allow use on any chain, but for whatever reason, maybe you want to create a specific address only for a specific chain. So you can just hit on the drop down, choose a specific chain, and then just leave it at that. Now here's where we give it a descriptive name. I like to call this a username, although it's not really a username, right? This is the name for your account for you to differentiate between different accounts. So let's just call this test tutorial 2023, and now we need to give it a password. Okay, so let's just hit add the account with the generated seed, and now you can see I've created my account here, test tutorial. Okay, and now let's go to the Polkadot JS apps. I've already got this open here, so let's open it. And here you could see I've only got one account, which is the one that I showed you at the beginning when we created that account. So let's refresh the page. And here you can see the test tutorial 2023 extension. Okay, you could see that I've got a public address allocated to this account. Again, this is the public address for Polkadot. Okay, it has been derived from that generic substrate address, just to make it very clear. Now you can also create an account if you want for Polkadot through here. This is another option. The other option is from JSON. Again, you can just restore accounts. Also from a QR code, and you can also use the multi-sig option if you've got multiple people that need to sign a transaction for funds to leave these wallets, right? You may want to do that if you want to create some kind of common fund. It is very common for people to do that as well if they've got common funds. There's also the proxied option here, which basically allows you to vote in governance through delegated accounts, which means that you can create like a mirror opposite of this exact same account, and then whatever funds you've got in this will be used to vote in governance with that secondary account, the proxied account, at the same time. So that's one way to do it. There are people that use this option, but I'm not using it personally. But like I said, there are people that do so, especially for voting in governance, people that are validators normally that validate those blocks. Now, let's look at the address book section here. So if we go to address book, here you've got a list of contacts. And here you can add a contact. If you click on add a contact, what you need to do here is you need to enter their public address and a name. And what this actually does is it allows you to easily identify a contact who you want to send coins to, for example, right? So if you go back to accounts here, let's say you wanted to send coins to a specific contact, you can just hit on send here, and then where you see the send to address box here, if you click the drop down, it would actually show you the contact if you actually had a contact. So you could just select that, and then you could send the coins to that contact. That way you're sure that you're not making any mistake when you're copying and pasting the code. But the other option is to just simply copy paste the code in here, and you can just basically send the coins that way, right, without having an associated name to that contact. That's another option. Now, what's very important here when sending funds from your wallet on Polkadot is that you always need to have an existential deposit of at least $1 to keep that wallet alive, plus some for transaction fees. Okay, it's very important. If not, then you can send the full balance, and then that's basically going to put your wallet into idle mode, which means you can't use it until you send more coins to it. Again, over $1 just to reactivate it. That's another option. And if you wanted to do that, you would have to select this option here. As you can see, normal transfer without keep alive checks, or transfer with account keep alive checks. But then there's another option that shows up if you had let's say the full balance there, because we don't have a balance, so it doesn't actually show anything here. But if we had a balance, we would get an option to send the full balance and then basically freeze that account. So what we do then is hit make transfer, sign the transaction with the password that we've set up at the beginning when we created our Polkadot JS account, and bingo, that's it. It would go on chain. And then of course you can follow that information. If you click on the drop down here, you can see your transferable balance, your transactions, the account type. It is an injected account because we've created it using the Polkadot JS extension. And here you've got .scanner, you've got Polkaholic, you've got Polka Stats. I like to use Subscan, which is the one here on the right hand side. There's also Sub ID. but Subscan is the most common one that I personally use. You know, it's the blockchain explorer for the ecosystem, and it has all the different networks there, so you can track your transaction there and see where it's at right now from the moment that you send it, in case it gets stuck, in case there's an error, whatever, right, for different reasons. And so that's how you do it. Now, if you want to send funds to this account, you want to receive them, you simply just copy this address here, the public address that you see here. And how do you do that? Well, you click on the bubble here, and as you can see on the top right hand corner, there's a check mark that basically shows you that we've copied our address. It's now in the clipboard, so you can just paste it on the exchange in the sending section, the withdrawal section of the exchange, in order to send your DOT from the exchange over to your wallet, or maybe from another wallet over to this wallet. So that's how it's done. Now, as you can see on the right hand side here, there are also 3 dots, and this is very important. You're going to be using this quite a lot, especially for certain actions. Like, for example, if you take part in governance voting, you will need to use this because you need to unlock your funds from governance voting, right? If you vote, you usually lock them, and we'll talk about that when we get to it, but it's just to show you that there is an importance with regards to these options here. And the first one we can see here is the set on-chain identity. And if we click on this, what's cool here is that we've got the display name, and we can make this display name show for everyone. Right now, it's only showing for me on my computer. And then if I ever comment on the Polkadot forum with this account, it will only show my public address, right? It will never actually show my display name. But if I set the identity and I pay a small transaction fee, then I can actually get it to show this identity, which is pretty cool. And you've actually got a deposit here that you need to pay. So as you can see, it even tells you on DOT, it is quite expensive. It's 20.25. This is the total amount of funds that will be reserved. These funds are returned when the identity is cleared. So if you want an identity, you need to lock that deposit. Okay, and you can give it a legal name if you want. Again, you shouldn't have to do this. If you want, you can validate your email and maybe your Twitter, as most people do. Sometimes Matrix too, with the right name. But email and Twitter are the most commonly ones to be validated. And then so once you do that, you basically have to go through some steps, which I've mentioned in a different video. I'm going to post a link to that video if you want to check it out on the top right hand corner of the screen on how to set up an identity. I'm not going to go through it in this specific video because it is quite complex, and so that's why I've done a dedicated video for that. But that's how you do that. So this is what it is for. And next, the other option here is to delegate democracy votes. Again, this is if you have a proxy account and you want to delegate democracy vote, you can just run this option here, and then it will basically use the proxy account to delegate to a specific proposal or referendum, so that you can vote for the referendum from 2 different accounts. And then of course you can also add the proxy this way if you want to do that. So that's how you do it. Next, let's look at the claim tokens button here. We're not going to spend too much time with this because this is ultimately claim your dot tokens, which is if you took part in the ICO back in 2017, this is how you claim your tokens or coins. I don't know why they call them tokens, because ultimately they are coins. There's the transfer option here, which is the equivalent of basically sending out the funds. It's exactly the same. And then there's the teleport option, which is very important. Okay, the teleport option means that you are basically moving your coins from one network to another network. Okay, you're not just making a transfer on the same network. That's why it's important to keep in mind the difference. Teleporting means moving from one network to another network. Transferring means transferring within the same network. Okay, so that's the difference. And so what you can do here is you can teleport to the statement common good chain, which is used usually for some testing tokens. You know, people that want to create some tokens on there, test them out, try out statement, see how things work. Maybe they want to implement them within a specific dApp. I mean, we have cases like, for example, Remark, which are also on StateMine, which is the Kusama equivalent of statement. And so, you know, this is what you could use it for. But aside from this, the teleport function works from Polkadot to any of the parachains that have the channel open and allow teleportation. So we'll talk about that when we get to some of the parachains. So ultimately what you do is you choose the chain. You have to send some funds to that address. Again, if you're sending funds to the address will be exactly the same. It will just be on a different network. Okay, so the address is the same in this specific case. However, in other cases, they will not have the same address. For example, from Polkadot to Akala, if you're teleporting, you will not have the same public address on Akala as you do on Polkadot, okay, but you are teleporting. So what you should do is you should send a certain amount of DOT. Of course, if you want to teleport to statement, the common good chain, you hit teleport, you sign the transaction, and you're done. And then what you would have to do is click on the top left hand corner of the screen where you see all the different networks, and here you can see statement. And if you click on it and then hit the switch button and you wait for this to load, then if you go to the account section, you would actually see that your account looks exactly the same, right, as the one on Polkadot, with a public address, and then you would see your dot there, right, in your balance here, because you ultimately teleported them to a different network. We are on a different network. We're no longer on Polkadot. And talking about networks, here you could see all the different networks that are available. We got Polkadot and its parachains all under one roof. Here you could see collectives. You can see Akala, Ayuna, RS Odyssey, Astar, Bifrost, all the different parachains. Okay, and if we actually click on one of these, so let's say for example you wanted to go to Astar, you could see that there are different nodes here available, so you can switch between any of these nodes if you want. It doesn't matter which one. Sometimes some nodes may be slower than others, and so it may be wise for you to switch to a different node and try to see if that works better, you know, if it loads faster. And then you hit switch here. After you do that, you could see that you've got a different public address in your account section. Okay, so that's interesting. And here you could see on the right hand side that you've got the coin Astar, okay, with its ticker symbol, and of course zero balance. But again, the functionalities are exactly the same if you were to use it. You just use the send button. In order to transfer in, you just copy it by clicking this bubble here to get the address onto the clipboard and use that on an exchange or on a different wallet. Now, what's also very important is if you notice here, if we haven't actually updated the network, because sometimes metadata changes, you know, and you need to update it. It does actually happen quite often, to be fair. And so you'll see this message here saying that you've got one extension that needs to be updated with the latest chain properties in order to display the correct information for the chain you're connecting to. And it actually shows you very, very simply here. It shows you the number 1 there, which means that it shows you where you need to update it. You hit settings here, you go to metadata, and all you have to do is upgrade the metadata for this extension, which is Polkadot JS. You hit that, you hit yes, update the metadata, and you're done. And now if we go back to accounts, you see that warning is gone now. So we have updated to the latest version of the Polkadot JS wallet. So let's go back here to Polkadot because we want to move over to the next option and show you what it's about. Next, let's talk about the network here. Network, we've got Explorer. If we click on that here, you could see all the different information with regards to the blocks. This is the recent block that has been created, and the validator who has validated that block, created it, and also validated the information, the transactions within the block. And here you could see a list of recent events as well, staking validator, balance transfer, everything that's been happening, right? Basically events that people are executing right now in the block. So everything is transparent on chain, as you can see. There's also the total issuance here. 1.26 billion DOT have been issued so far. Okay, so it shows you here how many have been finalized. The epoch as well, it's 66% done. In 4 hours it's going to be done apparently. So yeah, this is how it looks. As you can see, all the different validators here that are validating the blocks, they're basically updating in real time here. You can also go to block details to get more information on the blocks. Also the extrinsics as well that are being run. Latency, this is information that you don't normally need to check, right? Especially as a retail user. Maybe you just want to stake DOT, maybe you just want to hold it simply, right? Or maybe you just want to take part in the crowd loans, which we'll talk about that as well. Also forks, node info, and also API stats. So these are quite technical here. Like I said, you may not need to know this, but if you want to check out these stats, you can dig into it here. For various reasons. Now, this is one of the most important options in network, which is staking. So let's go to it. And then this one does take a while to load. It can be fairly slow. But here what you can actually do is you can see a list of all the different validators that are generating blocks. So here you could see a full list of them, and they got points, they got commission as well. They've got their own stake, and they've got the other stake, which means the number of people that have staked with them. So here you could see ones like P2P, for example, Hodl Farm, right? They've got 2.2 million DOT here, as you can see, from other people's stake. And from their own stake, they don't have anything, surprisingly, but Hodl Farm have, for example, 5,464 from their own stake. Okay, so it's important to note that as well. And once again, you can check information on these validators by going to Subscan. If you click on Subscan here, it does open up another link, and it basically gives you some details about the validator. You could see they're active. Basically, you could see how many nominators they've got. They've got 68 nominators. More information on their transactions, etc. Sometimes you can even get contact data. So sometimes if you click on their name here, if you look on the left hand side, you can see information such as Twitter, Hodl Farm, as you can see here, Riot name if you want to contact them on Matrix. You can even send them an email here, right? This is their email address. So they have to be public, right? They have to give you some sort of details so you can contact them should something happen. If you're staking with their validator, maybe something happened, maybe you've made a mistake, you've accidentally transferred funds, because this used to be one of the common incidents in the past, but now people are using the staking mechanism more wisely. And so yeah, what's very important to note here when you want to stake is that you should look at if they're generating blocks and the commission, right? So if they've got 100% commission, you need to stay away from them, because it just means they don't want anybody to stake with them, to nominate with them, right? And so what you should do is you should look at the ones that have lower commission, but definitely not zero commission, because that's a bit shady. Anything between maybe 2% to 10% I think is quite fair, to be fair. Yeah, as you can see, look, there are a lot of them with 10%. I mean, they need to live off this too. Think about it, right? They need to pay for all these resources to run these validators, and so they need to have some kind of income. They need to generate that, right? So these are some of the ways that you can do it. You can basically choose one of these validators, and if you are interested to choose one, let's say for example you wanted to choose Zog Capital or maybe Dragon Stake, for example. Let's say you wanted Dragon Stake, you could basically copy this address here by clicking on it, and then just keep in mind the other thing here with regards to choosing validators, in that you can see some of them have numbers next to them. So Dragon Stake 01, and then if you search for the specific validator in here, it will only show you that one node that he's got. But if you search by the name, you'll see that they may have multiple validators. Okay, so if you search by Dragon Stake, you could see that in this case, he doesn't actually have any other validators, but there are some cases where they do. For example, P2P. Let's search for P2P. So P2P are the largest validators around, right, in all of crypto. And as you can see, they've got multiple nodes here. They've got number 4, number 21, number 6, number 23. And if we look at their commission here, you could see it's 2.5%. Okay, so here you could see all the different information here, and the points, also the validated blocks as well. These are all the different blocks that they've last validated. And so yeah, this is how it basically works. And so let's assume that you want to stake with one of these guys. So what you need to do next is you need to go to accounts, and here we've got 3 different options on the right hand side here, top right hand side: nominator, validator, stash. So you want to be the nominator, right? You want to be the one who's staking, so you just simply click on nominator. You need to choose a stash account and a controller account. So as you can see here, it even tells you that think of the stash account as your cold wallet and the controller as your hot wallet. Funding operations are controlled by the stash, and your non-funding actions by the controller itself. To ensure optimal fund security, using the same stash controller is strongly discouraged but not forbidden. So you can simply, for simplicity, decide to use the stash and the controller account the same, unless you create a different address so that you can split the two. What you have to do here is you have to choose the amount of DOT that you want to bond. So let's say, for example, you had 250 DOT. Again, there is a minimum here that you need to bond when it comes to DOT, unfortunately. I believe it's around 220 DOT right now, if I remember correctly, but this does change. So you're likely going to get an error when you try to bond anything under that, and then it'll tell you what the minimum is. So let's assume 250. And now one thing to keep in mind if you do decide to stake is that you will need to keep those coins locked in for at least 28 days if you decide to remove them, right? You do need to wait 28 days for unbonding from a validator, and you will not be getting any rewards. Okay, this is very important that you know that, just so that you cannot complain after saying, hey, I've decided to stake, but now I've changed my mind. Well, and you need to wait 28 days. Well, unfortunately, that's the situation. That's what you have to do. So it clearly tells you here that you do need to wait that long. Okay, now it's very important to choose the payment destination here, okay, to avoid any problems. So you may decide to increase the amount of stake if you don't care about getting paid or to do anything with the dividends that you're receiving from those block rewards for staking with these validators, right? You can do that, or you could just select that you want to move everything to the stash account, but you do not want to increase the amount at stake. Okay, or if you want, you can move it to the controller account or another specified payment account if you have a third account. Let's say you have a stash, a controller, and another payment account where you want to get paid, or maybe you want to pay someone else. You can do that as well. You can specify the payment account if you want. And if you had an address book, remember I told you about the address book at the beginning, adding a contact. Let's say you wanted to pay someone, that would also show here. So you can just select that account and then you would pay that person from your dividends that you're generating for staking. Let's just assume that you wanted to stash the account, increase the amount at stake. And so what you would do then is you would hit next, and then you would be welcomed with another page that would basically ask you to choose the actual validator. Okay, that would be step 2 out of 2. As you can see, we are on step 1 out of 2, so on step 2 out of 2. Now I am going to show you how to do that on Kusama because I do have some Kusama, so let's get to that. Okay, so we are now on the Kusama network, which is the staging network or the canary network of Polkadot. Again, it looks very, very similar, so this is why I wanted to show you this, but I do actually have funds in this account, so I can actually go to page 2, which is actually what I haven't done in previous tutorials, and I really wanted to do it in this to show you that page 2 because I believe that's critical. It's important for you when choosing a validator. So we've got our stash account here, which has the funds. We've got our controller account, which has to be different than the stash account because I've actually staked already with this stash account, and I'm also using the same controller account. And so there's a value that has to be bonded here. As you can see, now this is my full balance. I am going to use less than that. Let's use 80, for example. Now, on-chain bonding duration on Kusama is different than on Polkadot. Instead of 28 days, it's 7 days if you decide to undelegate your coins from any of the validators that you're currently staking with. And then the payment destination, which looks exactly the same. Let's assume that you want to leave it a stash account, increase the amount at stake. You can do that, or you can specify a specific payment account. Now we're going to click next to show you the second page. Now this is the important page. Okay, it is retrieving all the data of the different candidate accounts. And what it actually means by this is the list of all the validators. Okay, so let's say, for example, you wanted to stake with Stake Plus like I am. You type Stake Plus, and here you can see all the different nodes that Stake Plus has. Remember, it's very important for you to have done your due diligence on the commissions for these validators beforehand. Okay, the reason I'm saying that is because it shows you the commission, it shows you if they're an active validator, okay, in that section where I showed you earlier on Polkadot. And so it's exactly the same on Kusama. Do that before you get to this step because you then know which validator to choose. And so let's assume you are staking with Stake Plus 2. Okay, he's got 5% commission on this specific node. You can just simply select this and then you hit bond and nominate. Now you can also choose multiple validators if you decide, right? Let's say this is just one of them. So let's say, for example, you wanted to choose Paradox, right? Paradox is Paranodes. Okay, he's an active member in the community as well. So he's got a lot of nodes, as you can see here. He's got Paranodes 2, Paranodes 10, Paranodes 12, etc. Right? I don't see number 1 actually, which is a bit weird. Oh, there's number 1. Okay, so let's assume that you wanted to stake with Paranodes 1 and with Stake Plus 2. So here we go, right? You've got the 2 here. They've obviously got their public addresses here with the validator addresses. If you click on these bubbles, you can see the data on them like I showed you before on Subscan, so that you can track down their contact information if you need to get in touch with them. The next thing you do is you hit bond and nominate. Okay, if you click on bond and nominate, it'll actually tell you here that you need to sign this transaction from your account. And so as you can see here, it shows you your account, it shows you the call hash, and it's got a sign and submit button. And if I click on sign and submit, then I would just enter the password for my account and then I would be done. Okay, so that's as simple as that, right? That's how it works. I'm going to cancel that because I've already staked, so there's no point for me to do that. But it's just to show you that you can choose as many validators as you want. If you want to distribute as much as possible, keep in mind that it will be spread and that you will be paying the commission based on each different validator. Okay, so that's how you do that. So next, let's move on to the next step. Another important step that you should learn about is once you delegate to a validator, what can you do? So as you can see, I have delegated on 2 different accounts here. With one of them, I've delegated to Stake Plus. So you can find that out by simply clicking on the drop down. It tells you who you've delegated with. And I've delegated 75 KSM, but because I've used the compounding method, I'm basically adding on to that stake. So now I've got 75.22. Now I've got different options here. As you can see, it tells me it's active. I've got the stop button here if I want to stop it and sign the transaction. I've also got the 3 dots here on the right hand side. Now this is important because here we've got different options. I can bond more funds if I want to add on to my stake. I can unbond funds if I want to unbond the full thing or only certain amount of the stake. For example, maybe only 20 KSM because I may need it. Now I will have to wait 7 days if I do that. Now there's the rebond funds option and the withdraw unbonded funds. Now these two options are grayed out, as you can see here, until the 7-day period passes, because you first have to stop it and then you get the option to withdraw those unbonded funds after the 7 days. Of course, it will tell you on which block you can actually do that. It's approximately 7 days. The other option is to change the controller account or change the reward destination. Maybe you've made a mistake at the time of staking and you decided that you want to switch to another account. Maybe you don't want to receive those funds, the staking rewards, to that account which you've originally selected. And the other option is set nominees. If you go to set nominees here, you can simply add another validator, right? So then you can distribute that stake, which is pretty cool. It gives you that flexibility to do it. And of course, you go down, you sign the transaction, and you're done. This is assuming that you wanted to add more validators to your list and you've only added one when you began, right? So in my case, I'm happy to stay with Stake Plus for now. If I decide to add more, I will do so in the future. So this is just an example of what you can do. And I think this is important to understand how it works, because if you ever want to unstake or simply change the validators that you're staking with, this is where you do it. This is the page, and it's exactly the same on Polkadot except for the timing. Now, another aspect that's very important is with regards to waiting before you get the rewards. Okay, so once you decide to select a validator and you stake with that validator, you delegate your coins to them, you will need to wait 2 eras before you get paid. Each era is 24 hours on Polkadot and 6 hours on Kusama. So on Kusama, you would have to wait 12 hours before you start receiving those rewards, and you can see them not only in your wallet but also in the Blockchain Explorer on Subscan. If you go there, you can see what you've been paid out, of course. And 24 hours on Polkadot, so you need to wait 2 eras, which means 2 days before you get those rewards. Okay, so then once again, don't panic, just wait until everything has been bonded. It will actually tell you if it's active or not, or if it's in waiting mode, and it will show in waiting mode for you right on this page here. Now let's look at the next option, which is pools. Now this is very important because this is one of the new features that has recently been integrated into the Polkadot Web Wallet, which is very important for new people who are staking for the first time. They're not sure who to stake with, they're not sure who to trust, they don't know anybody in the ecosystem, and so what they do is they go to these pools. There are 64 of them right now, and they can choose to be a member of this pool with any of these trusted validators and with many other people, of course, in order to generate some passive income, some dividends, right? Exactly the same way as staking. It just differs a little bit because you're entering a pool. So what data can we get here? Well, we've got Paradox here, which I've showed you earlier when I came to the Kusama validator list. He's also got a validator there. He's also on Polkadot. As you can see, he's running a pool here. He's nominating high reward, trusted, independent, right? So he's got some data about him here. And he is the #1 pool, is in an open state. So here you can see if pools are open or closed. If we scroll down here, I think we should be seeing the destroying pools as well. Wow, interesting. I can't see any closed pools here, so it only shows me the open ones. But here you can see how much DOT has been staked or delegated to this specific pool. So 60,080 DOT, which is a lot. You can see there are 13 nominees here. So basically a pool can nominate certain validators. And so you can see that Paradox has decided to nominate 13 different validators. You can see them all here. Out of them, you could see his own validator too. Yellowfin, Miles, Staking for All, Joe, and other people as well. So you can get a list of them here. And there are 190 members that are staking here, right? So in total is 60,080 DOT. And here you can see each different address and how much DOT they've decided to stake with this specific pool. Okay, and if you want to join a pool, it's very, very easy. You can just hit the join button here, but before that you can click the drop down, and here you can see the information on the pool. So the creator is Paranodes, the root, the nominator, toggler, etc., all Paranodes, the stash and the rewards account as well. So you can see pool 1 here, and you simply click join. You choose the account that you want to join from, and you just choose the amount of DOT that you want to assign to this pool. So then you just hit join, you sign the transaction, and you're done. So as you can see, it's much easier than staking by choosing a dedicated validator, right? That's the difference here when it comes to joining with these pools. So again, if you wanted to join with a different pool, it's the same, right? You can just basically choose from one of these. You can see the names here. You got Garotech, Talisman, which actually happen to have a wallet as well for Polkadot. It is a third-party wallet. Stake Plus as well. Swiss wallet. So we could see some familiar faces here if you've been in this space for a while. If you're new, you may not know who any of these people are. But yeah, this is how it is. So let's move on to the next topic. Targets here. The targets, you basically get information on the validators as well with regards to information like with capacity, one validator per operator, recent payout. So you can choose to toggle between any of these if you want. You can just basically select one of these options to get information on these validators. Also targets and slashes. So slashes basically shows you what are the current slashes that have happened with these validators. There hasn't been any slash, but let's move on to the next topic. So network and parachains. Okay, if we go to network and parachains, here you can get a list of all the different parachains on Polkadot. There are currently 36 parachains on Polkadot. You can see the full list of them here. Each parachain is associated with a para ID. You can see Akala here, the number one, has the 2000 para ID. You've got Statement here, which is the common good chain collectives, which is also a common good chain. Clover, Moonbeam, Astar, etc. all have a para ID associated to them. On the right hand side, you can see the lease period. So when is their lease due to expire? That on Polkadot, each parachain can have a 22-month lease. And what they normally do is when that lease is close to expiring, they try to either launch another crowd loan, which we'll talk about when we get to that point now, or they can self-fund. So these are the two different ways by using their own DOT to extend that lease for a further 22 months. Apparently they can do it for less than 22 months, but it's not in their best interest to do that because they want to secure it for as long as possible so that they can continue developing rather than focusing on getting that lease extension every single time, which is just not worth it simply, right? So it's better to just get it and forget it and then just focus on your work. So here you could see on the right hand side that Akala are due to expire in 290 days. You've got Capex here, 458 days, Crossed 626 days. It depends when they actually got it. So some of the more recent ones will expire much later, as you can see. Fala Network here, 374 days, Unique 458 days, and so on. And now Ayuna are one of the more recent ones, so you can see they've got 626 days left, and so on, so on. So that's how it works here. Next, let's look at Parathreads. Now Parathreads are the projects that want to become parachains, but they're not parachains yet. They haven't gotten a lease, and so they become a parathread, and they're ready to take part in that auction or the crowd loan, right? Regardless how they do it, they can either self-fund and still be part of the auction, or they can crowd loan and still be part of the auction, if you know what I mean. So we'll talk about the differences between the two. Like I said, self-funding means that they're going to use their own DOT in this case because we are on the Polkadot parachain. So they'll use their own DOT to win bids if they have any kind of competitors in the auction. If they're the only one in the auction, they can just bid with wherever they want and they will win the auction, right? At the end of the auction actually runs for 2 weeks on Polkadot. So if for 2 weeks there's zero competition and someone like, for example, Manta Network decide to launch and bid for themselves, then they can basically win because they'll have no competition, and at the end of the 2 weeks they will be announced the winner and they will upgrade from a parathread to a parachain, and we'll be going into that overview section which I showed you earlier. So this is the full list of the parathreads, as you can see here, and even parathreads have leases, as you can see here on the right hand side. In some cases this one has no number but it's got a para ID, sorry, it's got no name but it's got a para ID. And yeah, this is how it works here. If you click on Para ID, you can, I think you can even assign a Para ID, you can reserve a Para ID here if you are interested. Of course, you can reserve it from your specific address. It tells you what ID you can get. It costs you 100 DOT to reserve it. You hit submit and you sign the transaction just to reserve a Para ID. If you go to the auction section, you can see the bids here. There is no ongoing auction right now. Auction 36 is not active. Okay, then there's the crowd loan. So the crowd loan section shows you the current active crowd loans right now. We got Hashed Network here, which is the current active crowd loan, which is due to end in 34 days and 8 hours. Now there are some issues, unfortunately, technical ones, and so you can't actually take part in this. You can contribute, but it's not going to work out. I'm not sure if they're going to refund people. I assume they're going to refund their DOT once they are removed from the crowd loan because of these technical issues, but normally this is where the action happens. Okay, so here you can see all the different winners of the previous auctions, and it tells you when they're going to become a parachain. So Pendulum actually won a parachain auction, but they're still a parathread as we saw them in that list earlier, and in 34 days and 8 hours they will be upgrading from parathread to parachain, and they will be in the overview list as a parachain. Now if you want to contribute to a crowd loan, in general it's very easy. There are two different ways that you can do that. You can either do that, there are actually multiple ways that you can do that, not only two. So the first way is directly from the Polkadot Web Wallet by hitting contribute, then choosing an account you want to use to contribute from, and then paying that minimum contribution. The minimum is 5, and then of course you need to keep 1 to keep your account alive, remember, as I showed you at the beginning. And then you need to have some extra dot for transaction fees, because you will need to pay those transaction fees. So maybe something like 6.1 dot should be enough for that minimum contribution of 5 dot, because you'll have 1 dot to keep the account alive and some extra dot for the transaction fees. Okay, so I hope that's clear. You hit contribute here, and once you do that, you sign the transaction with your password and you're done. You have contributed, and that's all you have to do. The other option is directly from the website. In some cases, let's say there would be a different network that you want to contribute to. If there would have been someone else, sometimes on their website they may offer you special bonuses, for example early bird bonus if you contribute directly from their website, or they may have a referral bonus as well. You may get like 5% extra coins or 10% extra coins if you use the referral link. And I have done many videos in the past, especially in 2021, where I explained how you can do that, and I have shared my referral link for people to contribute, and so that could be another way. Now a third way could be through third-party networks, for example Bifrost, for example Parallel, right? These are different parachains that offer you the possibility to contribute to these crowd loans through their platform. And aside from getting the base reward, which is guaranteed, you also get an extra bonus reward in their specific coin. Not only that, but you also get access to your dot much sooner, because one of the things you need to keep in mind here is once you hit contribute with those 5 dot, your 5 dot are going to be locked up for 22 months for the duration of that lease in a specific crowd loan address. Okay, so the team are not going to have access to your address. It's very important to keep that in mind. Nobody has access to it, not you, not the team. It's frozen for the duration of that lease of 22 months. Okay, even longer than 22 months to be fair, because if they win an auction and they become a parachain, it's actually 22 months and 2 weeks, because they will actually start their lease from the moment that they win the auction. So that's why it takes that extra time. And so what happens is after 22 months end, you would normally get that dot delivered back to you, transferred back to you, because it gets unlocked from that crowd loan address, because somebody runs an extrinsic. They need to run that extrinsic in order for the dot to be refunded back to you. Now if you're using one of those third-party methods like Bifrost, like Parallel, then things work different there, because you can have access to that dot straight away under what is known as a liquid form, liquid dot. Okay, and in that case you can use that dot to swap it back for real dot, right? And if you do that, then you can teleport that dot back to the relay chain, so you can have access to it on this account, right, in your Polkadot Web Wallet, and you can do whatever you want with it. You can use it to contribute to more crowd loans, for example, right? So that's the benefit of using those third-party apps, and many people have done so during the crowd loan stages, simply because why not, right? I mean, they get that dot quicker. It may not be worth as much, so they're sacrificing the difference there, because they may be like a 0.8 to 1 ratio. So you're getting 0.8 dot for each dot because you've used that app, and because you're getting a tokenized version of that dot, and there may not be enough liquidity for it, but at the end of the day you are getting that dot. Okay, so that's the important thing to keep in mind. And so yeah, that's how it is. I hope that that's clear to you. Now with regards to crowd loans on Kusama, the lease is usually for 11 months. At least that's how it's been so far. And so it did attract more people back in 2021, as you can imagine, because the crowd loans first kicked off on Kusama and later they happened on DOT at the end of 2021. And so yeah, a lot more people contributed to the Kusama ones, and it was also more attractive because they only lasted for 11 months, right? Not having such a long lockup does seem to be more attractive. But just like with Polkadot, on Kusama you can also do the same. You can use those third-party apps to contribute and get a liquid version of Kusama, which is worth a little bit less than the real relay chain Kusama. and also get some tokens maybe as an extra reward from that specific third-party app, or also go directly to the team's website and contribute through that, right? That's another option. So that was a lot of information. I hope it made sense to you. Next, let's look at the scheduler here. If we look at the scheduler, we've got the dispatch queue here, which shows us information on what is scheduled, basically, what kind of updates are scheduled. Event calendar, let's see what are the upcoming events, the ones that have the dot here next to them. Election of new council candidates, enactment of the result of referendum 85, start of the next referendum voting period. So now this is a deep topic, so it takes a while for this information to digest. So let's go to governance to kick things off. The first option here is pre-images. Now, how does this actually work? Well, pre-images are hashed information of the activity that you want to engage with, right? So let's say, for example, you wanted to hit on add pre-image here. You could choose, of course, the account that you want to use it from, and then the purpose. Okay, what do you propose? What do you want to use? What do you want to create this pre-image as? So let's say, for example, you wanted to use this pre-image for the Treasury because you wanted to get funding. So you'd go choose Treasury as the first option, and then the next option would be spend amount. Okay, so spend amount because you want to spend an amount from the Treasury. Okay, then the amount that you want to choose here. So again, this amount is very important because once you create a pre-image with this, then you cannot go back if you've already submitted that proposal to the referendum on chain. Okay, now once you create it here and you realize that you've made a mistake, you can simply remove this. It gets refunded to you, right? Because you do need to pay a deposit here. The deposit gets refunded to you, and then once that's done, then that's okay, right? No big deal. Everything is fine. You can just try again. But if you associate a pre-image with a referendum, then you are in trouble. So just make sure to try and get this right, basically, so that you don't have to do that again. Now, what is the amount? So let's say, for example, you wanted to request 1000 DOT. As you can see, it is generating a pre-image hash for you here. Now, here is the box for the beneficiary ID, which means that you need to enter an address of where you want that money to be sent to should the referendum be won. Let's say, for example, you don't mind if it goes to the same address where you submitted it from, so you can just leave it as it is. But if you wanted to change it to something else, you just hit the drop down and you can choose a different account. Next thing you do is you hit submit pre-image. Once you do that, here you could see that you need to pay a transaction fee. Of course, you need to pay a deposit as well, and you need to pay the transaction fee, and you've got your call hash here. Again, you can copy this now and maybe paste it in a notepad or something, or you can just wait because what's going to happen after you sign and submit the transaction, what you would normally have to do is you'd have to go here and you could see your pre-image and just check that everything is okay. And then you can just copy the pre-image hash here, right? So that's how it works. It's very simple. And then once you do that, then you need to go to governance and you need to go to referendum. Now, this may not be the best place to show you because things are different here when it comes to Polkadot compared to Kusama. You will see the differences. I will go to the Kusama one to show you as well. But ultimately, once you submit that pre-image, once you've got that pre-image, you can also do it through here, by the way. That's another option. So you could have done it here in the pre-images section, or you can go to submit pre-image here and follow the exact same steps. Again, both options are exactly the same. The next thing you would do after you have that pre-image hash, you would hit submit proposal. And here you could see it's asking you for that pre-image hash. Okay, so you need to paste that in, and then it tells you the locked balance here. So the amount that you need to lock in order for this proposal to go on chain. And then, of course, the minimum deposit, which is 100 DOT. Okay, so here, if we look down here, you could see all the different referendums that are available and all the different proposals. Here you could see all the different ones. They're all technical, as you can see here. These are all technical proposals. Utility batch, add register, etc. And you can see who they've been launched by as well, like Crypto Stake, for example. He launched a proposal. It's got 100 DOT locked. You can endorse the proposal if you want. As you can see here, it can be endorsed by one person from the same account, but it's likely endorsed 3 times. Now, I don't know when they endorse it. It looks like you can endorse with a deposit, and I'm not sure if you can do that multiple times. But it looks like it can because they have locked up 100 DOT here. But the fact that they've endorsed on 3 accounts, it might be that they've got 300 DOT in total to endorse it, although it's not showing up here. So I'm not entirely sure why, but I could be wrong. I'm not 100% sure on how that bit works, to be fair. But here you could see all the different referendums that have been launched. So when you submit a proposal, you can also launch a referendum, at least on Kusama. That's how it works right now because we are in open governance. We're in governance 2.0. On Polkadot is still governance 1.0. So here you can simply vote on these proposals. But before you do that, of course, you should always check to see what it's about, because many people vote without checking. They just see like that a referendum has a lot of I votes, so they're just like, let's hit vote here. Let's hit no lockup period. Let's just choose the value, hit vote I, sign the transaction, set and forget, but you don't know what you're actually voting for. So to find out what you're voting for, you just hit this drop down arrow here. And here you've got the external links, Polka Scan, Polka Assembly, etc. So you hit on Polka Assembly, it takes you to that website for the referendum on Polka Assembly. You can get more information on what they're trying to do here. As you can see, they're looking at increasing the maximum number of nomination pools. And then if you look down here, you could see the person who submitted this as well. Raul is his name. He's got the crown here, so he's a counselor. It gives you his details there as well. And here you can get more details on the proposal. And of course, you can comment if you want. Now, I didn't log in here, so I can't comment, right? But if you are, you could have. And here you can see all the different voters. You can see all their associated IDs. Some of them choose not to have an identity. And this goes back to the identity bit that I was telling you earlier at the start of the video. If you choose to have an identity and someone moves over to that check mark next to your username, they can see your email address, they can see your right or your Twitter, depending on what you've decided to validate. So that's how it looks. And you can see they voted with 50 dot, 0.1x conviction, which means they're realistically only voting with 5 dot, okay? And they're not locking up their dot for longer than this referendum, which means that when this referendum ends in 3 hours and 19 minutes, that dot is unlocked to them, right? So that's the thing with voting here. You got to keep in mind is that the conviction is important. 0.1x means no lockup period, but it is still locked up for the duration of that referendum. Now, 1x voting balance means 20 days of lockup on Polkadot for the duration of the referendum, plus the 28 additional days. Okay, so that's why you got to keep in mind here when it comes to voting on Polkadot versus voting on Kusama referendums, where the period is much less. Now, as you can see here, the maximum you can vote for is 6x your voting balance, and it will lock it for 896 days. So that's a very long time. You're not going to see many people vote with 6x on Polkadot, but you can see people vote for like 1x or 2x perhaps, because it's okay. I mean, if you're in this long term, even 4x should be okay. But to me personally, I mean 6x voting here with 32x duration, 896 days is a very long time, so I'm assuming not many people are going to be inclined to do that, and that's why the majority tend to just do 0.1x their voting balance. So here you can just hit vote I or vote NI. Let's say you wanted to vote I, you sign and submit, enter your password for the account, and you're done. So that's how you do that here. And then again, you can vote in multiple referendums with the same amount. So if you've got 200 dot, for example, you can vote 200 dot in this, 200 dot in that, as long as you're keeping some for those transaction fees. Remember, it's very important, because once that dot is used to vote in a referendum, you won't be able to use it to pay for transaction fees. However, you are able to vote in referendums if you are staking that dot. So if you are staking to those pools like I showed you earlier on, or to a dedicated validator, then you can still vote in governance. It doesn't stop you. One other thing that I've noticed recently is that if you have voted in governance and you hadn't staked, you can still stake, which is awesome. So although your dot is locked up in governance, you can also stake, right? It does give you that flexibility. The team at Parity knew that that was a case here for some people, that they could maybe vote and they realized they voted and they're like, oh no, I didn't stake. Now can I still stake because it's no longer transferable? Well, you can. That's the good news. So that's awesome, right? Now council, if we go to council here, you could see all the different council members. So we've got Raul here, who's the top one. If you scroll down here, you can see the full list. Even Gavin Wood himself, if you scroll down here, you can see Gavin Wood himself is here. Gav, he's a member of the council, and he's the prime voter as well. 13.3 million dot have been used to support him to be a council member. As you can see here, that is the backing, because here you can see all the different backing that people got. And as you can see, Raul got the most backing here, 21.3 million. 110 people have voted with this amount to back him up. Like, look, you can see all the different voters here, out of which people that are part of the council as well, like Sean Tabrizi, for example. One guy here used 5,000 dot, Staker Space as well. And then the first one here used 439,685 dot to back Raul to be in the council and to actually be at the top here, as you can see. So awesome. Runners up as well, we've got Rob, we've got the Web3 Foundation, we've got Bruno from Remark as well on number 3 with 10.6 million dot. 56 votes already, but yeah, they need to wait until they open up the next candidacy, I believe. I'm not sure until they open that up. Until then, you just need to wait. We got Dan Reeser down at the bottom as well, P2P, and other ones as well, Hypersphere. So yeah, if you want to become part of the council, you can just submit your candidacy. Apparently, you need to lock up $100, and people obviously need to know who you are. You hit submit, and that's pretty much it. You can see this bond will be reserved for the duration of your candidacy and membership, and you just need to wait. So once you submit that candidacy, you're going to be in the runners up section. Actually, you're not. You're actually going to be in the candidate section. So you're going to be in the candidate section, and then when enough people are going to vote for you, then you may enter the runners up section. I don't know what the minimum amount you need to have here. I don't know if you need to be above this one here, which is the lowest one, 7,815 dot. Perhaps you do, because this person here, Hashquark, has got only 2 votes supporting them, as you can see here. So perhaps you need to beat this in order for you to qualify, or maybe you can enter into the runners up even if you have less than this. I'm not 100% sure on this. I'm not sure if somebody has to actually get you into the runners up from the existing council members. It could be that that is the case, and then of course you've got the vote button here if you want to back any of these council candidates. As you can see here, this is the full list that we've got. You can even back the runners up, I believe here. Yeah, you can back Dan Reeser, for example, Hashquark, which has the lowest one if you want, and yeah, just enter the amount that you want to vote for them. Of course, if you had a balance here, then you hit vote and sign the transaction, and you're done. There's also the motions page here, which tells you the Treasury approval proposals and the I votes as well. And so that's that. Let's move on to the next part here, which is the TechCom. Again, not much to talk about here. It just shows you the members of TechCom. Here we've got Web3 Foundation and Parity. Treasury, again, the Treasury proposals here. You could see all the different proposals of people requesting funding. These are the different information that we've got on them here. As you can see, the approved ones down at the bottom, and then the ones that are currently running at the moment. Again, you can check information on these proposals by going to Subsquare or Polka Assembly, which again, Polka Assembly is a really good one because you can comment there as well. And then there's the tips section here. The tips section is for anyone that's contributing to the ecosystem in some way, but it has to be Polkadot really, because if you want to do it on Kusama, there's a different method for that through the Kusama Treasury now. It has changed because of open governance, but Polkadot is still on governance 1.0, which means that you depend on the council for any contributions. Let's say, for example, I'm doing this awesome tutorial now, and maybe I want to try and get some tips for this tutorial, so I can just take a link and I can paste the link here as a remark. So basically it's going to show as a text here, and I could say, hi, my name is Claudio, this is the Crypto Exchange channel, this is the link to the channel, this is the link to my wallet. As you can see, the wallet is matching with what I've got in the description of this video, and I would like to request a tip, please, so they can decide how much you deserve to be tipped. And we've got the tippers here. As you can see, 6 tippers, and each one has voted 20 dots. So again, people can vote differently here from the council. Again, it has to be the council members. It cannot be anyone else. It cannot be coin holders like with Kusama. And this is the awesome thing about Kusama now, that anyone can choose to support you from the community when it comes to these tips. Okay, so that's the difference here. And Polkadot is going to be the same, but for now, that's how it works. And so how do you do that? You simply go to propose tip. You enter the account, you choose the account that you want to propose the tip with, the beneficiary account, where do you want the tip to be sent to, the tip reason, like I said, this is where you enter that text, which is the remark string, and then you hit propose string, propose tip. You have to lock a certain amount of dot. You don't need that much. I think it's like 0.2 or 0.3 or so. You hit propose tip, you sign the transaction, and you're done. And then your tip request is going to show up here in this list with your contribution, basically. So you can see there are people that are doing instructional videos about nomination pools in different languages here. As you can see, in Italian, 250 dot, and so on. Now, it does take a very long time to get a tip approved here. I just want to make you aware of that, because it depends on the quorum. What do I mean by quorum? Well, I mean that the majority have to vote from the council than the total number of council members for you to actually get one of these tips. So let's go back to council to show you what I mean here. So let's look at the council here. So here you could see there are 13 seats in the council. Okay, these are all the 13 council members. Now you need to have at least 7 people, right? Why do I say 7 people? Because 7 plus 7 equals 14 and there are 13 seats. So that means that more than 50% of the people have decided to support you for a tip request. Okay, so that's why you need that many in order for you to actually get that tip. So until 7 people vote, you're not going to get that tip. Okay, so that's just something I want you to know and to understand how it works. And here you can see the highest we've got is 6 tippers. So just one more is needed on each of these 3 in order to trigger that timer so that this person is beneficiary can receive their tip of $100 on average, $20 on average, and $10 on average respectively. So that's how it works. Next, let's look at bounties. Bounties are the different methods of requesting funding, be it for events, be it for maybe certain hackathons that you may want to use, that you may want to launch. Anti-scam bounty, as you can see, this is another option here where you want to get some funding for that as well, but it's mostly for events, right? And you can see here it tells you the next action is in 18 days, 15 days. You can add a bounty here if you want to request a bounty, give it a title, the bounty requested allocation, the total amount of this bounty, curator fees included. Bounty bond, you need to lock 1 dot, okay? And of course it does depend on the bounty title length apparently, so the proposer bond depends on the bounty title length, and of course this is going to increase the longer you're going to make this. Look, as you can see, it's growing. It's not by a lot though. It's not by a lot. I mean, look, 1.34 dot for this kind of title. So yeah, it's nothing to worry about. But you simply hit on add bounty here, and of course you choose the account you want to submit it with, sign the transaction, and that's it. Once again, what you can do is you can enter here and go to Polka assembly. And on the Polka assembly, you should add, of course, as much details as possible about that bounty, because that's how you're ultimately going to receive the bounty at the end of the day. So we've got Zoe here, who actually happens to work for Fala Network. I've met her multiple times. I've even interviewed her on my channel. She's an events bounty curator, so you can see that she's got $1 million allocated to her for events. Okay, so if you want to launch an event or a conference in relation to Polkadot, then you can reach out to Zoe and you can try and get a share of this bounty to be able to fund that event. Like there was one in Madrid, for example, recently by Polkadot World, and they've reached out to Zoe to get a share of that bounty to be able to launch that event. And so of course you need to send a proposal with all of the different steps that you may want to take. For example, how much does catering cost, how much does the event venue cost, all these different things that you got to keep in mind, all these different costs before reaching out. So yeah, that's how that works. Now next, let's talk about the developer section. This is the techie bit, so I'm not going to spend too much time here. Extrinsics is one that you will need to use though, even though you're not very techie. You will have to select the account. Let's say, for example, you contributed to a crowd loan and you want to unlock that balance because you've got certain coins that need to be unlocked to your account. Okay, so if you want to do that, you usually select the account, you hit the drop down here. Now it's not gonna work here, I believe, for this one because it's Polkadot, but you would hit vesting, and here on the drop down you would have vest or claim normally. Claim, so you would hit claim in that case, right? And then you would just submit the transaction, sign that transaction, and then you would get the allocated amount that's due for you to get from that, for you contributing to that crowd loan, okay? Because you've got a certain allocation, and so that's how you would do that. And that's probably the only time that you would use this section if you're not a developer or if you're not very techy. Settings, again with settings, it's back to metadata in general. Like I was telling you, if you want to update your metadata, you normally go here. It would tell you to go here, but yeah, it basically gives you information of your wallet here. So the default for the connected node that you're currently connected to, default for the connected node, default interface language. Do not attach Ledger devices. So Ledger hardware device support is only available on Chromium based browsers where Web USB and Web HID support is available in the browser. So it's telling me here, because I'm using Mozilla Firefox for this tutorial, that I cannot use a Ledger device here. Now you would have to go here on Google Chrome if you want to connect your Ledger device to Polkadot. You would just select Ledger device there, and then you would accept that action because it's not really a transaction, it's an action. You would accept that action on your ledger device, and then your account would show in the account section with the ledger. So that's what you would use that for. Again, metadata, like I told you before, this is where you go in order for you to update that metadata for the latest version of this wallet. There's also a translate section here as well if you want to translate from different languages. I guess this is how you would do it. So you could see here it even has Chinese translations here. So that's how you would do that. You can choose the different languages here: Russian, Portuguese, etc. I believe that this is to translate the whole wallet. So we've got Spanish here, and then if I choose that, it will actually change the account. So you can choose what account you want to translate, I guess, the module to display strings for. So yeah, it would tell me in Spanish what I want here. Now the next thing I want to show you is if we go to Kusama, let's switch networks here, go to Kusama. So as you can see, we've got different tabs here. We've got the Polkadot and Parachain tab, we've got Kusama and Parachains, we've got Test West End and Parachains, which is basically the test network. And then we've got Test Rococo and Parachains, which is the test network for Kusama. So Test West End is the test network for Polkadot, and Test Rococo is for Kusama. Live networks are all the different solo chains, which are basically blockchains on substrate that are not parachains nor parathreads. Okay, some of them can be solo chains and parathreads, and solo chains and parachains, but yeah, some just might decide not to do any of that and just to be a solo chain. And then there's the test networks, which are all the different networks that are still in testing at the moment. And there's also the development section for that as well. Now let's go to Kusama. Let's select Kusama, go to switch. And so here on Kusama, what I want to talk about here is in relation to governance, because this is what's different from the other chains, right? So we've got governance here, and we've got referenda, which, as you notice, it is different than the one on Polkadot. There's also fellowship here, and this is the information that's going to get deployed to Polkadot as well. But let's look at referenda first. So referenda is split very nicely now on Kusama because it's on governance 2.0. So here we've got the total issuance, as you can see, 13.1 million KSM, the inactive issuance as well, the active issuance. There are 8 active referendums at the moment. The total is 53 that have been pushed so far. Here you could see there's a root origin referendum type, which is basically a technical referendum for a technical change. The whitelisted caller, again technical. The treasurer, which is to approve a bounty, which has actually been submitted by one of the validators here, Stake Plus, which I've mentioned earlier with regards to staking. If you want to stake, you can stake with Stake Plus as well. So you can see that they've tried to get a bounty now because apparently they had a referendum which had the wrong extrinsic call, and it caused an error. And because of that error, they now have to run another extrinsic, which is the bounty approved bounty. And this is why he's running this now. And it's passing with 100%, as you can see here, 83,252 votes in favor. I've also voted in favor of this as well. Nobody has voted against it, because why would you? I mean, the purpose of this referendum was to basically get funding and help the validators from the 1,000 validator program, which is a special program where they're trying to aim and attract validators to decentralize the Kusama net without struggles. And the purpose of that program was to basically get extra funding for them to help them with their hardware. For example, let's say if they're performing really well as a validator and they deserve some upgrade on their hardware, then they would get that extra funding to support them. And so that was the purpose of this bounty basically. And so that's gonna pass, as you can see, in 13 days and 3 hours. There's also the general admin section here, as you can see, which is submitted by Subscan. It's still missing the decision deposit. Now anyone can submit a decision deposit, by the way. You just simply hit decision deposit. It's very expensive, so if you want to put that on the line, you can. 166.66 KSM, as you can see here. Place the deposit, sign the transaction, and you wait, and you will get that deposit back at the end of this period. Okay, it depends on the period. It's usually 14 days. I haven't seen any referendum run longer than 14 days on Kusama. That's the maximum. There's also the different tracks here for the treasury. So there's the small spender track. For example, there's the number 45 currently, which is for Everloot, running for another 6 days and 24 minutes. And as you can see, they are losing at the moment because the nay vote got 157,715 KSM with the I vote 16,666. There's also the medium spender as well, which is actually done by myself. 8 days and 9 hours left, currently winning with 14,095 NI votes, 6,874 in nay votes. And the big spender track, which is the one that can request up to 33,333 KSM, which is a bit of a weird number. The medium one can request up to 3,333 KSM, and the small spender can request up to 333 KSM. I know it sounds weird, but that's how it works. And then if you look at the two other tracks, which are for the tips, remember I talked about the tips on the Polkadot one. Well, it is different here because the community can actually vote for your tips. They'll actually go under one of the tracks and people can simply vote. It's not up to the council if you deserve a tip or not, which is quite awesome because this decentralizes the whole process. And it's going to be interesting to see how it's going to go going forward when people are going to be requesting those tips. Not a lot of people have done, so I've requested a few tips. One passed, one failed, but that's the beauty of it. So with regards to pre-images, you do the same like I showed you before. You add a pre-image, you choose the different extrinsics here. So for example, if you wanted to get tips, what you have to do is you have to select the Treasury extrinsic, and then you have to go down to spend. So once again, you enter the amount that you would like to get for tips. And this is why it's very important for you to know what the different tracks offer you. So for a small tip proposal, then you can only claim up to 8 KSM. Okay, so it's important for your pre-image to not have more than 8 KSM. And then it should be under, it should be like 7.99 to be fair, because I believe if it's 8, then it may not work. I could be wrong because it's up to. I'm not sure if it means up to and including 8 KSM. This is one thing that I'm not sure of. So that's why I'm telling you it's better if you're safe than sorry. So 7.99 KSM for a small tip request is the maximum. It could be less, of course. You choose that amount, you add the ID where you want to be paid, so the beneficiary ID, and here you would get the hash. You submit the pre-image. You do need 1.34 KSM or 1.33 KSM if I remember correctly, that you need to lock up as a deposit for the pre-image, and then you would have to submit a proposal, and that's where you would have to copy that pre-image. And again, you get that pre-image hash by going to pre-images there, and you copy that. Okay, it has to be yours, of course, and then you choose the track here. So as you can see, this does look different than the one on Polkadot because this is Governance 2.0. This is how it's going to be on Polkadot as well, and here you can choose the different tracks. You've got the different one here, small tipper, so it tells you origin able to spend up to 8 KSM from the Treasury at once. For the big tipper, it's up to 33 KSM, and then it goes to 333, 333, like I was telling you, 3,000 and 33,000. So yeah, up to 8 KSM for the small tipper. Let's say if you've done some contribution, maybe you've created an awesome Twitter thread, or you've created some really cool Polkadot or Kusama logos. You could just go to the small tipper here, paste your pre-image hash, leave everything as it is. Then you've got the submission deposit, which is 0.033. You go down, you hit on submit proposal here, click on that, sign the transaction, and you're done. Now what you should do once your referendum shows up here, you would see that the decision deposit is showing up exactly as it's showing up here, but obviously it would be under the small tipper section, so it would be down at the bottom in a different track. So you would have to hit decision deposit. You would have to add that deposit, which wouldn't be that high, to be honest. For the small tippers, like 0.333, so it'd be the same as this, right? It's like 0.033 KSM. You add that decision deposit because you need it in order for your referendum to enter the deciding mode, right? As you can see, these are all in deciding mode, so it would remain in preparing mode until you add that decision deposit for a while, and then it would time out and fail if you don't add that decision deposit. So you have to do that. Just make sure you do that and don't abandon your referendum. And then the next most important thing that you need to do is you need to go down in the list, hit that arrow, and then go to Polka Assembly. And then in Polka Assembly, if you open Polka Assembly here, it takes you directly to the referendum. You can see there's a title and there's some information, right? So you need to have a title and you need to add some information in the description section, because if you don't, people are just going to vote against you because they're not going to know why you actually need that much funding, right? Give me a reason why you need the funding. And this is why it's very important to have a proposal in advance, to be discussing it in the discussion section. Here on the left hand side, as you can see, you can access on Polka Assembly the discussion section, submit your proposal there, raise a discussion, wait a number of days for people to look into it, to evaluate it, to comment, to give you some feedback. And then once you're happy, once you made the changes, once people are happy, then you can simply go ahead and raise that referendum, right? By following the steps that I've showed you earlier on. So once you do that, then of course you need to go to the description, enter that description with the information, with the link to your proposal, and then people are going to comment, of course, and they're going to vote. So that's how it works. This is democracy for you. And once again, I can't stress enough the importance of communicating with the community when launching these referendums, because it can come back to bite you if you don't. So it's an awesome system, but just make sure you communicate to people and you explain your reasons very well in detail. And this is why the discussion section is very important on Polka Assembly, because that's where you can get a lot of the feedback. Yes, this is it from today's video. Again, like I said, everything that I've covered in today's video is basically an up-to-date version of the Polkadot Web Wallet, which was very, very complex, as you've seen for yourself. I mean, there are a ton of options that you can go through. There are so many different things that you can go through, but I hope that this tutorial can prove handy and could hopefully help you in becoming a better user of the Polkadot Web Wallet. Thank you for watching, and have a lovely day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.